Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Panatipata virmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Adinnādāna virmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Kāmesu miccācārā virmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Musāvādā virmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Suramira vajjapamādana virmani sikkhapadam samadhiyami. Iti piso bhagavā araham sammā sambuddho viññācarana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasārati santādeva manustānam buddho bhagavati. Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sanditthiko akaliko ehipassiko opanayiko pacchantam meditambo viññohiti. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Ujjupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Yatidam cattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho Ahuneyo Dakhineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuntaram Punyam Khettam Lokasvati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's practice the loving kindness. Filling the entire body with the mind. to yourself. You may wish yourself and bless yourself for your physical and mental well-being. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be relaxed. May I be peaceful. Feeling the love in the center of your heart. Letting your loving thoughts go to all beings in the world, in the universe. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be relaxed. May all beings be peaceful. Broadening your heart, broadening your mind, feeling the deep sense of connectedness with all beings in all directions. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be relaxed. May all beings be peaceful. Now taking a few deep inhalations and exhalations, refreshing your body and mind. Then you open your eyes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. is today, right? So that should be okay. We have some in the front.
First one here.
Yeah. So you can listen. That's fine. Okay. Alright. So welcome back to our Monday evening Dhamma discussion. So today I selected two discourses actually. They're quite similar in the meaning in the Dhamma. So these two discourses are from the Sankichcha. So let's go to the first one. Now the name of that sutta is actually, as I remember, the title is not there. It's called the Sakunaggi Suththa. Sakunaggi. The Pali word Sakuna means the bird. Sakuna. So this is a small story about a small bird. That's why that name is given to that discourse. Sakunaggi Suththa. Let's see how it goes. So here in this discourse, Buddha directly addressing the venerable monks. Because once in the past, a hawk suddenly swooped down and seized a quail, a small bird. Then, while the quail was being carried off by the hawk, he lamented, "We were so unlucky, of so little merit. We strayed out of our own resort into the domain of others. If we had stayed in our own resort today, in our own ancestral domain, this hawk wouldn't have stood a chance against me in a fight. But what is your own resort, quail? What is your own ancestral domain?" The freshly plowed, so that the hawk is asking the little bird, and then the little bird, the quail, the freshly plowed field covered with clods of soil. So that's a very small story. So it's very simple. So this big hawk caught a small bird while this little bird was flying in the air. So somehow when the quail was caught, he was crying and he was saying something important that he said, "You would not have caught me if I was in my own domain, in my own ancestral territory." So that's what the little bird said. Then the hawk, confident of her own strength, not boasting of her own strength, released the quail, saying, "Go now, quail, but even there you won't escape me." So this little bird was very strong there, right? And powerful to say to this big bird. So the hawk released it, and saying that, "Go to your own territory, go to your own domain, even there you will not escape. I will come and get you." Okay. Then because the quail went to the freshly plowed field covered with clods of soil, having climbed up on a large clod, he stood there and addressed the hawk. "Come get me now, hawk. Come get me now, hawk." Okay. So he was challenging. So he went back to his own territory where the freshly plowed field, and he was standing, climbing up on a large cloud. He cried out loud, "Okay, now if you dare, come and get me." Okay. So then the hawk, confident of her own strength, not boasting of her own strength, folded up both her wings and suddenly swooped down on the quail. But when the quail knew that hawk had come close, he slipped inside the cloud, and the hawk shattered her breast right on the spot. So that's what happened. The little bird, as the hawk was coming closer, very closer to the quail, it suddenly went inside the cloud and hid himself. So because of the speed, how fast the hawk was coming down, she hurt her breast on the soil, and she died right there. So that is the story. Very short story. Okay. So then, so it is because when one strays outside one's own resort into the domain of others. Therefore, because do not stray outside your own resort into the domain of others. Okay. Mãra will gain access to those who have strayed outside their own resort into the domain of others. Mãra will get a hold on them. And what is not a bhikkhu's own resort but the domain of others? It is the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing, and sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, tastes cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. There are the 5 chords of sensual pleasures. This is what is not a bhikkhu's own resort but the domain of others. So you need to go to page 1633. Okay. Move in your own resort, bhikkhus. In your own ancestral domain, Mãra will not gain access to those who move in their own resort. In their own ancestral domain, Mãra will not get a hold on them. And what is a bhikkhu's resort, his own ancestral domain? It is the 4 establishments of mindfulness. What for? Here bhikkhus, a bhikkhu dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, real comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, phenomena in phenomena, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. This is a bhikkhu's resort, his own ancestral domain. That is the short discourse, but it explains a lot of Dhamma. When you get to know the teachings, we can see there are so many things to learn in this short story. Mainly, the important part in this sutra, this discourse is to know what is our own domain and what is not our own domain or territory. And what happens to us if we are not staying within our own territory, and what happens to us when we are going out of our own territory into the other's domain. So this is the summary of the discourse, right? So according to the Buddha's explanations here, an important term comes as the Mãra. You may have heard that term in the Dhamma. The Mãra is the evil one, evil god. The word Mãra means several things in the Dhamma. One is this divine Mãra. It's a divine being, a deity, a god, who is a very powerful. According to many teachings, many discourses, this evil Mãra came to the Buddha and his other disciples to distract them from the spiritual path, spiritual practice from time to time. There are so many incidents in the Buddha's life, even when Prince Siddhartha was leaving the palace in search of the truth. It is said that this evil god came to stop him, saying that Prince Siddhartha is going to be a great king, an emperor. So he was trying to encourage him not to leave the palace, but to stay in the palace and enjoy the sensual pleasure, the kingdom, the royal inheritance and everything. But Prince Siddhartha did not listen and went into the ascetic life. And even during the self-mortification time for 6 years, this evil one came to him, asking, go back to the palace, don't waste your life, don't ruin yourself. So he was encouraging him to go back to the sensual world, to the pleasure, but he did not listen, he didn't turn back. So even at the enlightenment, just before attaining enlightenment, the evil one came to distract him. But Buddha defeated the Mãra, this evil god, this power of his spiritual qualities, it is said, and he attained the enlightenment. So even after the enlightenment, this evil god came to the Buddha saying that you are now enlightened, you have achieved what you were looking for, so now it is the time to leave this world. So Buddha said something very important, very interesting. Buddha explained to the Mãra that you don't have to worry about my departure, but the Tathagata, the Buddha, would not die until his disciples are capable of teaching the entire Dhamma, the entire path to the liberation, to the world. Not only the monks, but nuns, even his followers, all the followers are capable of teaching, explaining the Dhamma in detail to the world. So until then, Buddha will not die. So the Mãra went away. So he came several times, encouraging him like that. But Buddha recognized him. Sometimes he came in disguise. But Buddha recognized the Mãra and asked him to leave. Because Buddha did not listen. Buddha was not able to the Mãra was not able to convince the Buddha or control him. So even for the disciples, when Buddha's disciples were practicing meditation in the forests, sitting under the trees, in the caves, this Mãra, evil god, came to distract them from time to time. So we can see that the evil Mãra's duty is to distract these disciples and the Buddha from the spiritual path. So you can clearly see that he's very happy when the world is engaging in these sensual matters, sensual world, sensual pleasure. So that is the field of the Mãra according to the Buddha's teaching here. So the Mãra's field is the sensual pleasure, the sensual world. And also in the Dhamma, the word Mãra is used to explain the meaning of the different types of defilements, mental impurities, right? The craving, the desire, anger, delusions, and all these mental impurities are also known as the Mãra. The word Mãra is used to identify these mental impurities, any negativity. And we can simply understand the Mãra to be all the suffering even what we are going through in our life, right? Emotional pain, other distractions, whatever we call, whatever we name in our everyday life, any distraction, any disturbance, any negativity that we are going through can be called as Mãra even. Any negative side, any negative meaning. And also the word Mãra is used for the death. The death is also the Mãra. In Sinhala we call the Maranya. So that is also another meaning, the Mãra, the death. Okay. So according to the teachings, anyone who is engaged in the sensual pleasures, in the sensual world, the sensual matters, that person is under the control of the Mãra. So that is what directly explains in this sutra, in this discourse. Okay. So if anyone is indulging in the sensual pleasures, interested in the sensual pleasure, right, this material world, the sensual experiences. You know, what are these sensual experiences? The things that we see from our eyes, the sounds we hear through our ears, and the smells from our nose, and the taste from our tongue, and the sensations from our body, tactile sensations. So these are the 5 sensual experiences. So when we think about our life, our everyday life, whole life is all about gratifying these senses. If you think about your everyday life, every single moment, our effort is to please these senses, 5 senses, including our mind actually, right? So this is the purpose of our normal life, and not only a human being. All beings are trying to please these senses. That is the purpose of this life. So we can see that, according to the Buddha's teachings, to look for the pleasure from these sensual experiences not easy. Even though they are very pleasing, right? In many discourses, Buddha uses these terms. Why people get attached to these sensual pleasures? They are very pleasing, desirable. They are very pleasant, agreeable. They are inviting, enticing. So these kind of terms are used in the Dhamma to explain why people really get attached to these sensual pleasures. If there's no any of these signs of these sensual pleasures, people would not look for them. People would not struggle that much, right? There are these qualities in the sensual pleasure, in the superficial level. That's why people work so hard to gain these sensual pleasures. But at the same time, as Buddha explains this positive side of the sensual pleasure, what we call the asada, which means there's a pleasant or positive aspect of these sensual pleasures. But in the teachings, in many discourses, Buddha explains there are many negative aspects of these sensual pleasures. So we don't even usually think about these negative aspects of these sensual pleasures, because our whole effort to please these senses, So we hardly think about the drawbacks of that process. So Buddha clearly explains in detail how much people are suffering, how much people are struggling, wasting their time, right? Spending their time to find these sensual pleasures, right? If you just sit silently, closed eyes, any of these sensual pleasures would not come to you. That means you have to work so hard, right? They don't come to you. You have to go for them. You have to go after them. You have to look for them. You have to work so hard, right? You have to wake up in the morning, go to work, right? Earn money, cook, and do all these things. So that's the meaning. You have to work so hard. It's not easy to gain these sensual pleasures. And even when you gain these sensual pleasures, they don't stay forever. They are very temporary. They are very short term. They are not going to be with you forever. They are always changing without your control. They are temporary. So in that process, people go through so many problems, so much negativities. Right? We can see that the fear, worries, frustrations, stress, anxieties, insecurities, and all these things are based on these sensual pleasures. When you try to please your senses, all these negativities are following. So in many discourses, Buddha explains the negative consequences of that process. If you simply follow that direction of finding indulgence in these sensual pleasures, eventually you will end up in all these negativities. So we can see that how one end up in suffering eventually if they follow that direction. Right? If that becomes the ultimate purpose of life, which is to find the sensual pleasure, so people end up in disappointment because they would not find that permanent happiness in that. It's very temporary. So Buddha explains as a very common example the happiness, the pleasure people are trying to find in the sensual pleasure is just like having a dream in the night. So you may enjoy so many things in your dreams, right? So people take that opportunity. People enjoy dreaming. Why? It is the time to achieve whatever you may not achieve in your normal life. Right? So people enjoy dreaming. Whenever you don't have the opportunity to enjoy or achieve whatever you are looking for in your everyday life, you usually dream it. So that is the way of releasing that tension. Modern psychology explains that. Even though we think that the dreaming is as a disturbance to our sleep, modern psychology explains that people who dream a lot to be very healthy. Why? Because through the dreaming they release that tension of not getting what they want, what they appreciate, what they enjoy in their real life. So that makes sense. So we have to think about it. So somehow, the Buddha says, finding the happiness of sensual pleasure is just like having a beautiful dream. When you wake up, only when you wake up you realize that, it was just a dream. Nothing in reality. Nothing is left eventually when you wake up. So, sensual pleasure is also like that. When you work so hard to achieve something in the sensual world, there is a kind of similar feeling that you also gain. Wow, is this what I struggled for? Eventually people feel that way, right? As they work so hard, sacrificing so many things in their life, they find that to be useless most of the time. So that is also a common sign of the sensual pleasure. And also it has a very negative aspect that you can never satisfy your senses, according to the teachings and also according to our experiences. That actually we can see that your eyes never tell you, oh, I have seen enough now. There's no such a thing, right? Your ears, your nose, tongue, your body, your emotions, they never say enough. They never get satisfied. So you can see our whole life is a struggle to please these senses, but never get satisfied. So this is what we do in our everyday life, whole life. And it has been same for our existence, Buddha says. Not only in this life, this is what we have been doing in our previous lives also. And it will continue even to the future. That is the nature of this sensual pleasure, that you never get satisfied. Your senses never get satisfied. So we can see that it is an ongoing struggle. So all these negativities are following us whenever we try to find and maintain the sensual happiness in the world. So then it makes sense, as Buddha explains here, if anyone is indulging in this sensual pleasure, that person can be easily seen by the Mãra, which simply means can easily end up in suffering and other negativities. So this is what it clearly explains in this discourse. Okay. So Buddha says, Buddha advises the monks to know their own territory, their own domain. And to stray from own domain here is exactly the domain of the Mãra, which is the sensual pleasure, the sensual world, sensual experiences. So that is inevitable, right? If anyone is easily caught up in the sensual world, sensual pleasure, that person can be easily seen by the Mãra, or which simply means that person can easily go through these endless negativities. Okay. So that is the territory of the Mãra, the evil one, the negative aspect. Okay. And then the most important thing is to know what is our own territory. What does it mean? So what would be the proper territory for us? As Buddha explains here, it is nothing but the 4 foundations of mindfulness. As we commonly learn in the Dhamma, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The mindfulness on the physical reality, this body, and the mindfulness on sensations, and the mindfulness on the mind itself, and the mindfulness on the Dhamma, the conditional reality, the phenomena. So these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We call them, in Pali they are Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana. So these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So Buddha explains these 4 foundations of mindfulness to be our own domain, our own territory. And now think about that small story. What happened to the bird, right? So bird came to know that suffering came to him, that deadly attack came to him because of leaving its own safe territory. And he had the confidence that if he was in his own territory, domain, ancestral domain it is said, ancestral domain, it would be very well protected. Very well protected, no harm. So then, these 4 foundations of mindfulness is our own safe domain and territory according to the Buddha's teachings. So now we have to understand how is it possible? What does it mean to be very well protected, well guarded, well secure when we are bound to these 4 foundations of mindfulness? So this is exactly the Buddha's spiritual path. When we think about the Noble Eightfold Path, it is the Samma Sati, the right mindfulness. To be mindful about these 4 references: physical reality, sensual reality, mental reality, and the conditional reality, phenomena. So when we maintain our mindful awareness on these 4 territories, 4 areas, it literally means, according to Dhamma, it means that Mãra would not see you. Mãra cannot see you. Mãra would not be able to spot you. This is what Buddha says. Or in another way, it is explaining that whenever you are maintaining your right mindfulness on these 4 foundations of mindfulness, that is the way to let go of your negativity, your suffering. So this is what Buddha teaches here. So how is it possible? How it can happen? We need to understand, right? So when we understand that, commonly for any of our experience, okay, whatever we are experiencing in our life, they are bound right to this body and mind, right? So this is what Buddha says, our ancestral domain. Ancestral domain means we got this body from our parents. We get our body from our parents. That's our ancestral domain. Buddha used that term, sake pettike vishe, our own domain to be this body and mind. This is what we call our life, which we got from our parents. So we have to be bound to this own territory. That means we have to reflect on what happens to us when we are experiencing everything within this body and mind. So that part of the Dhamma actually has a very significant value. Buddha says, in many places he explains that our true happiness to be found right within, right? Not without, right? Right within this body and mind. In many places Buddha explains even the 4 noble truths to be realized right within this body and mind, not externally. So it's a very different aspect. In many religions, spiritual practices we can see in the world, their ultimate happiness, their salvation, the freedom of suffering is to be found externally. Or your happiness is in someone's hands, right? But in the Buddha's teachings, he explains that our final goal, our enlightenment, our freedom of suffering, our salvation is right here, right within ourselves, nowhere else. So this is a very clear transformation, a difference between so many religions, spiritual practices in the world, if you think about. So therefore, these 4 foundations of mindfulness also is all about this body and mind. Because this is where we experience everything. If anything has to be your own experience, they all have to go through this body and mind. Otherwise, it is not your experience, right? Everything has to go through this body and mind to be your own experience. So, when we think about our happiness as the purpose of our life, our whole purpose is to be free from suffering and to be happy. That's why we do all these things, even in your everyday life. So when you think about your happiness, there is also something related to your mind, your body and mind, not external. So therefore, whenever we want to be truly happy in this world, in this life, we have to be aware of this body and mind. Or technically, to say that, we need to know the mechanism of this suffering and happiness. How it happened to us? How it can happen to us? What is the process? So without knowing that, the true happiness is not possible. So we can see that in the normal world, in our life, in general, we suffer in our life mostly because we are not paying enough attention to our inner experiences. We do not know what is exactly happening to our body and mind in any given experience. So that's the normal nature of the human life, because we always pay our attention to the external world, to the material world, thinking our happiness is found outside of ourselves. So therefore we hardly pay our attention to our inner experience. So this is all about maintaining that 4 foundations of mindfulness, turning our outward attention inward, bringing our attention to experience and acknowledge what exactly happens here whenever we experience anything. Right? So to understand that, as I mentioned earlier, whenever we experience any single experience within this body and mind, these 4 foundations can be experienced. Which means, for any experience, there is a physical reality. That means, we experience it in our physical body. That's the physical reality. How you feel it in your body. So therefore, this physical reality, the physical body is very important in this Dhamma practice, to be aware, to observe, to be mindful. So we share this physical reality with every experience. There's something going on in our physical reality, physical conditions, right? How do you feel? How do you experience it in your physical body? How do you feel? How can you feel it? Do you have any answer?
You feel a sensation, right? If you're having sensuality itself and the physical reaction of your body.
Yeah, the physical reality is actually very superficial. It's a very tangible, observable reality. Like how you feel it in your body. You feel tense in your body, right? You may feel so light in your body, right? You feel it in your body in different ways, right? That is the physical reality, How you experience it in your physical body, right? Even you can see that how your heart rate goes up, right? When you go through different situations, experiences, right? But when you calm down, it's different. Even how you breathe in and out is different. That's the physical reality. So all the time, even though we are aware or not, there's a physical way of experiencing our every experience. Okay. And then, the second reality is the sensual reality. for any given experience, there's a sensual way of experiencing it, right? That is what we call the sensations, Vedana. So what are these sensations? Pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, and neutral sensations. So these sensations are there for any given experience. So this is very interesting actually. If you think about your experience, even when you eat something, okay, even in relationships, you can see that. Everywhere we see that sensual reality within your system, okay. This is a very interesting example to understand that point, So when you say that you love someone, okay, why you say that? Why you say so? In front of that person, you feel differently, right? How you feel differently?
You have a pleasant experience when you
Right,
look
it's
at
a pleasant sensation when you are in front of that person. When you interact with that person, it's a pleasant sensation for you in your body, right? It's very physical. That sensation is very physical. You experience it, right? It's so soothing. It can be so pleasant. So all these positive signs, as Buddha explained, are there, right, for that sensation. So Buddha clearly explains, this is very important to understand. It is not that person you really love or like, but the sensation you are going through, you are experiencing is something you really get attached to, or you appreciate, you enjoy. But you don't see that. You don't see that because your whole attention is outside. So without knowing that sensual experience, you say, oh, I love that person. It is not that person you love, but it is the positive or the pleasant sensation you are going through that you really crave for. So when you eat something, it is also the same. When you eat a cheesecake, piece of cheesecake or an apple, it is not the apple or the cheesecake you love. It is this pleasant sensation you are having in your system. Therefore you say, I love that cheesecake, I love that apple, I love that chocolate, I love that Japanese cookies somebody brought today. So it is the sensation. So you can see that how this entire world is interacting with the sensual experience eventually, right? Eventually, technically, they are dealing with these sensual reality. But not knowing that exactly, they are struggling with this external world, with people, this material world. So this is what Buddha says. Buddha teaches us, Buddha asks us to observe. There's a sensation for any given experience. So how these sensations are created in your system is also very important, very interesting. Buddha clearly explains in details in many discourses. These sensations are created within our system as a long process, right? Starting with our superficial senses. And these signals have to go to our brain. And certain related areas in the brain get stimulated according to these signals. And then according to these signals, this manipulation of these brain signals, our memories get involved. If we have previously experienced these things, a similar kind of sensation are experienced, right? If we liked it in the past, a pleasant sensation arises in our system. If I hated it, if I didn't like it, unpleasant sensation is created in our body. So it is the brain eventually handle these things, right? According to that past memories, our brain releases certain types of hormones into our blood system. And that carries the signals to our entire body, giving this similar sensation in our whole body, right? So it's all over your body, these sensations. So this sensation is the thing that we really react to, right? If it is unpleasant, we want to run away from it, or we want to attack it. If it is pleasant, if it is soothing, enjoyable, you go for it, you crave for it, you are dying to get it, right? We can see that two attitudes. So based on these sensations, so this is what Buddha explains here. These sensations are created, compounded, conditioned, right? It is not the reality. It's something created with a lot of conditions around that. So when you experience your sensations, your experiences like that, you find, you understand, you don't really have anything to get hold on to. Because you see the process of creating these sensations. So now you can see the meaning of having this internal observation, or the introspection we call. We see the process of having these experiences. Not the objective reality we call, but the subjective reality. What happens to our body and mind when we go through these different experiences, right? So that is the way to, not to get caught up by these illusions, right? So this is what Buddha directly explains here. To be with our own territory is to constantly, continuously reflect on this reality, to see how it happens, what happens when we are experiencing these things. So the second contemplation is on the sensual reality. And also, for any given experience, there's a mental reality also, which means how you feel it in your mind. That's the mental reality. You can have very different experiences in your mind. You may feel sad, you may feel happy, right? You may feel frustrated, right? So different types of mental experiences are there for any given experiences. So eventually, this is what we identify as our experience. Using all these external conditions, stimulations, these objects, relationships. Eventually, how we feel it in our mind is what mostly matters, right? We are dealing with eventually. So that is what we are looking for in our life. We all want to be happy in our mind. We all want to let go of suffering, mental pain. All these negativities are eventually experienced in the mind. So that's why in the Buddha's teachings, he gives the priority to observe our mind. To know what happens to our mind when we have these experiences. And that's how even the Dhamma starts with. Mano Ubbangama Dhamma. Mano Settha Mano. Manasa che padutten, bhasativa kavativa. So it explains how eventually we create this reality out of our mind. So it's a totally different story when you think about what we experience in our life. This external reality is something that our brain creates. That's what we call the mind, right? It's a different question. What is the mind? What is the brain? We are not touching that question, but you may call it the brain, you may call it the mind, right? This reality is eventually a mind creation, a creation of our own mind. In that creation, everything is connected within this system, in our body and mind, our sensations, our chemicals, our hormones, our neurons, blood system, every single organ, even connected there. Without the contribution of every single part of this body, we would not have this experience of the world, right? That is the connection. So somehow, everything is created in our mind, in our consciousness. So we can see then this world also is a compounded, a created, conditioned reality, which simply means it is not the reality. It is not true. What we are seeing, what we are hearing, what we feel out of this world is a creation of our own brain, even in our mind, right? So it was very interesting actually when I learned that the colors we see is also the creation of our own brain. It's very interesting to think about. It's a creation of our own brain. Otherwise, these color pigments, they don't enter our eyes, right? They don't enter our eyes. Our eyes can get only the signals, the wave frequencies of the light. How they are processed in our brain actually gives us the colors. So these colors are also the mind creation. So we can see that everything what we are experiencing in our life is a mind creation, creation of our own mind. So Buddha teaches us here to be aware, to observe, to be mindful about this mental reality in any given experience. How I share it in our mind, how I experience it in our mind. And then the conditional reality, the phenomena, how these things are happening as a connection of all these conditions, and how these things are changing, interacting with so many different conditions. As the Dhamma there are several topics in the Dhamma that we contemplate on. So somehow, these four conditions of mindfulness is all about what we are experiencing, what basically happens to us in our body and mind when we go through these experiences. And in that process, the exact meaning of to be in our own territory, to be on our own domain, is to stick to these four realities, to be aware of these conditional reality, and not to create any misunderstandings or delusions, or even not to take these things as permanent, or not to take these things as me, mine, myself, these wrong beliefs. So these are the conditions actually that bring us the suffering and other negativities. So we can see that clearly, technically, when we are not processing that within ourselves, we easily get caught up in these illusions. So that is the territory of the Mãra. That is the territory of the evil one. That's the territory of these negativities. So what Buddha directly teaches us here is that we always have to be concerned about, we have to be mindful about this body and mind. To be very simple. We have to pay our attention to what happens to our body and mind all the time. Not only for a short time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, but it has to be a constant practice. That is the means. In order to protect our mind, in order to let go all the negativities, in order for us to be free from suffering, we always have to maintain this constant mindful awareness on our reality, on our four foundations: physical reality, sensual reality, mental reality, and the conditional reality. So if we are not mindful, you are out of your own domain, or you are out of your control. So the evil one, the Mãra, can see you, can spot you, can distract you. So this is what Buddha explains in that sutra. So the two domains, the Mãra's domains are the sensual experiences, 5 sensual experiences. You know, if you find indulgence, if you have craving, desire, emotional attachment to these 5 sensual experiences, that is the territory of the Mãra. So you may end up in suffering and other negativities if you find these sensual pleasure to be your ultimate goal in your life, ultimate happiness in your life. It is an illusion. So knowing that, we need to be within our own territory. We have to be within our own domain, which is this spiritual practice of maintaining the satipatthana, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Basically to know what is happening to our body and mind all the time. Only then you can let go of these negative conditions, our illusions, negative emotions. That is the way to maintain our happiness, maintain our peace and control. So this is what they explain to the monks there with that very simple story. Okay. So, do we have any question? Any thought? No questions?
So we're living in this world,
Yeah.
in our body, interacting with sensual fulfillment, I guess, all the time with a meal,
Yes.
sleeping. So say you're a musician, so you're creating, you're luring Mãra all the time by creating
Right.
pleasing sounds.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So as we are normal human beings, right? We always live in this superficial world. We enjoy everything, right? We want to enjoy things. But it's very important in the Dhamma how Buddha explains. Actually, that leads to the second story here. I didn't have time to go through that. But if you're really mindful, if you are really smart, you know how to tactfully escape the Mãra. You know even how to enjoy the world without getting caught up by the Mãra. Without getting into these negative conditions, you know how to enjoy it. So, it gives us a deep lesson, right? Simply, we should know the limit. That's what it means. We should know the limit or the point where we begin to suffer, where we begin to go through or experience any negativity, right? People without knowing that limit, they easily get caught up in the negativities. It's okay to enjoy the world. So this is what Buddha says. Even in many discourses, you need to understand the pleasure of the sensual pleasure. These positive qualities of the sensual pleasure, what we call the aswada, in Pali it is the asada. It has to be understood. That's why people, all beings, get attached to this sensual pleasure. So Buddha never denies it. They are pleasurable, enjoyable, enticing. so soothing when we experience that. That's why we get attached to, whole world get attached to these conditions. It is the nature. But there's a negative experience, negative aspect to these sensual pleasures. As we have to go through so many negative conditions in the process. That is what we call the adi, the drawbacks of this sensual pleasure. So when you know that, even when you maintain these 4 foundations of mindfulness, you enjoy it. Buddha says that in the discourses. It is said that the normal world complain even sometimes without knowing, like Buddha or the other enlightened beings are the most happiest people lived in this world, on the planet, right? We say that because they purified their mind from all these negativities. But they enjoy everything, what they see, what they hear, but without any craving to that, without having any negativity inside. They completely enjoy it. The pure enjoyment is that. But our happiness is disturbed, distracted by so many conditions when we experience that. Right? Why? We mostly live in the past or we live in the future. So whenever there is something to enjoy, all these external conditions get into the present experience and distract us. So we don't know how to enjoy that. Right? So, like Buddha or any other enlightened beings, they just lived in this world just like us. They didn't live in another world or anywhere like that. But they were exactly living in this same world. So they enjoyed everything, but spiritually, meaningfully, not negatively. Knowing the reality, having that knowledge of how things happen, knowing that ultimate reality, they never get caught up in these negative conditions. So they enjoy. So it's okay to enjoy, right? Simply to know that it's okay to enjoy, but knowing the reality, right? Then it's very meaningful. There's less chance of getting caught up by these negative conditions there. So that is the value of practicing these spiritual qualities. Okay?
So is that where the middle path comes
Exactly,
in?
right?
Okay.
That's what we call
Yeah.
the middle path or the balance, right understanding. So when we have all these necessary qualities inside, we know how to navigate through, how to handle these things. So it's being so smart, it's being so smart. So Buddha explains that in an example, when people set up traps for animals, right? So you have seen the Tom and Jerry. I love that. Always Tom gives a piece of cheese to Jerry, right? So sometimes Jerry is very smart. He eats the piece of cheese and run away without getting caught up. Just like that, Buddha says, if you're smart, you know how to escape the Mãra. You will still eat the piece of cheese. You enjoy, but you never get caught up. So that is exactly what the enlightened beings have done. His teachings is all about how to escape the Mãra, how to escape this negativity, being mindful, being smart, being wise. This is the purpose of practicing all these spiritual qualities. So this practice is very important to our everyday life then. At least to have that simple mindfulness of what is happening to me. To have that introspection. It is possible. But it's a challenge when you are dealing with so many things in your everyday life. It's very hard to turn that attention inward. But that is where we need the training. This is where we need to practice that quality of being mindful all the time. So it's a training. But that is the way to let go of these negativities. So it's a matter of appreciation. If you know the value of it, if you can acknowledge the benefits of it, you always try to be mindful. So that is the meaning of that story, that discourse, Sakunaggi Suththa. Do we have any other question or comment?
Bhante, I often wonder with the foundations of mindfulness, like informal sitting practice is obviously a bit easier. You're sitting there with your body and your mind. But I often wonder about how integrated into everyday life. You're busy doing things, you're talking to people. Is the idea that there should always be a part of your mind that is detached from what you're doing, paying attention to your inner experience? Or are you going back and forth between what you're doing?
Right.
Or does it become almost automatic after?
Okay. That's a good question, actually. I have an example for that. It's like watching a movie. Okay. I take this example to explain how practicing of mindfulness has to be. How does it look like? We say that our life also to be a movie, right? Like with different episodes, stories, parts of it, and we all are acting in it, right? In our story, in our drama, in our movie. So the movie is just playing on the screen. If we are not mindful, there's no audience. There's no one to watch. Right? Do you get it? Just the movie is going on. The movie is being played on the screen, but there's no one to enjoy, no one to criticize, no one to make comments. Just the story is going on. So the mindfulness is to have an audience at the same time. While you are playing in the movie, you have to be in the audience at the same time. It's a special skill, therefore. It's a special, unique skill, which is possible. Right? That's what we have been doing, actually. Practicing the Dhamma. Practicing mindfulness is exactly like being in the movie and in the audience at the same time. We have to train that. We have to cultivate that quality. It is possible, but in our case, most of the time, mostly in general, just the story is going on. The movie is playing on the screen, no one to watch. So we don't know even how to enjoy when there are things to enjoy. When there are things to suffer or there are negative conditions, we easily get caught up in these conditions. And even no one to make any judgment, no one even to guide, no one is there to make suggestions, anything like that. The mindfulness is very important, therefore, to have someone always to watch, to observe, to know. So if you can see, this is the beginning of the spiritual life, to have someone to watch you, right? Which is the mindfulness. This is where the normal life and spiritual life changes. Right? From the moment that you are having someone to watch yourself, what happens to you, to your body, your mind, your sensations, and that is where your life is going to be different. The different means you are going to be very conscious. You are going to feel like you are living. You become so active. Right? Only then you begin to realize that you are alive. If you are not mindful, even though you are alive or like dead. It's very important to know. Life can be very joyful, very enjoyable if you are mindful. So that is all about the Buddha's teachings. The 4 foundations of mindfulness is all about that. But it's a training. To have that skill, to be in the movie and in the audience at the same time, requires a special skill. That's what we are cultivating, practicing in this sitting meditation. It is very essential, very important. That's where you practice it. When you go out then, off the cushion, it follows you. You have that ability, you have that skill to watch yourself, even with open eyes. Even when you are doing multitasking, you simply be aware of what is happening to you. Even as you cultivate that quality, you become aware of what is happening around you. It can be broadened, it can be cultivated in that way, So we can see how beneficial that would be, to be very sensitive, to feel these things very easily. So it's all about practicing this mindfulness. So then, in time, as you train it, as you cultivate that quality, it becomes natural, as you say. It follows you. You don't have to struggle. Definitely, it's going to be a struggle in the beginning, right? Because it is not something that we are used to. So we have to struggle in the beginning, but when we appreciate it, when we enjoy it, when we see the value of it, when we see the benefit of that, when we practice it more frequently, eventually that quality follows us. So there it becomes effortless. That's where we need to be, But it takes time. We have to be very patient, Okay, anything else? So, all the teachings actually, in the Buddha's teachings, are aiming to this point. This is exactly where the real Dhamma, the real path is practiced. When you think about the suffering, the happiness, the enlightenment, this is where the real practice, the training is explained. All other things are the supporting factors to get into this point, to maintain these 4 foundations of mindfulness. That's where we are going to end all the suffering eventually, technically, according to the Dhamma. So it's very important to understand. So take time, think about it, experience it, analyze it, talk about it. That's the way to learn and practice. Okay, so with that, we will end our discussion today. Thank you very much. And blessings to you. Sadhu, sadhu.